Hello, readers of Every Word, and welcome to Every Word 365. I'm your host, Christina Munoz-Madsen. Today we're reading 1 Samuel 1 through 3. God is sovereign. He answers prayer in His time and according to His purposes. That is in today's daily walk. Back when I listened to country music a lot, Unanswered Prayers was one of my favorites. While I still enjoy a good Garth Brooks tune, I no longer use that phrase. Why? Because it has a bit of a connotation that God is choosing to ignore the person praying. I believe all honest prayers are heard. What God does with them is completely up to Him. We often pray, "Thy will be done," like when we say the Lord's Prayer. And if we've learned anything so far in this Bible reading, I think we've seen that God's will is not always easy to understand. Do you think that God is most interested in making us happy and comfortable? Or that He is more often building up our character by allowing us to go through trials of many kinds? See James 1, 2 through 4 and Romans 5, 3 through 4 for the answer, and I bet you can guess where I'm headed with that. On that note, welcome to 1 Samuel, one of my favorite books to read through. Lots of good storytelling, which is my favorite parts of the Bible. I'm including a Got Questions link about Hannah and Samuel. The story of Hannah and Samuel offers many important lessons for today. First, Hannah turned to God in prayer during her time of need. Second, she praised and thanked God when He did answer her prayer. Third, she kept her commitment to the Lord, even though it must have been so difficult. Fourth, God blessed Hannah beyond what she had asked. In the end, Hannah was not only the mother of Samuel, but of 3 other sons and 2 daughters. The story of Hannah and Samuel has often been an inspiration and encouragement to women struggling with infertility or who, for some reason, are unable to have children. Though God does not always answer in the same way, Hannah's attitude of prayer and dependence on the Lord is a good example for all of us. So, of course, I'm including the link that comes from, which is gotquestions.org. Hannah's story gives us insight into God's heart. God does not despise human desire. Hannah's longing for a child was obviously placed in her heart by God Himself. Her husband tries to comfort her, saying in loving exasperation, "Am I not more to you than 10 sons?" He does not understand why she cannot be content with what she has, namely him. But Hannah's desire for a son would not be quenched. She was mocked by Peninnah and rebuked by Eli, but heard by God. God did not chastise her for being discontent. We know that godly contentment is great gain, but that does not mean that our human desires, even those that overwhelm us with sorrow when they are unmet, are sinful in God's eyes. He understands our feelings. He knows that a, quote, hope deferred makes the heart sick. That's in Proverbs 13:12. And He invites us to bring our requests to Him. And of course, that's in Philippians 4:6, the one about do not be anxious about anything, but present your request to God. Hannah's story also teaches us that God can use human weakness to accomplish great things. Samuel, Hannah's son, grew up to be a great man of God, the final judge and the prophet who anointed the first 2 kings of Israel. But why was Hannah's story necessary? Why not just start with Samuel in the tabernacle or at the start of his judgeship? Why not simply let him be born to a God-fearing couple and send an angel to tell them to dedicate their son to God? In short, why involve Hannah's grief? Because God is glorified in Hannah's story. Her weakness, her trust in God as she turned to Him, the fervency of her desire, and her faithfulness in bringing Samuel to God as promised are all evidences of God working in Hannah's life. Her tears were ordained to be a part of the glorious story of what God was doing in Israel's history. Every person experiences desires that will not be quenched and circumstances that cause grief. Many times we simply do not understand these things. But in the life of Hannah, we see that God knows our story from beginning to end, that everything has a purpose, and that trust in Him is never misplaced. Wow, the multitude of lessons that we can learn from this sweet story about Hannah's grief and the outcome. I personally love Hannah's story because, as I've shared, we struggled with infertility before having our 2 babies. I like to call them miracle babies. We scientifically can still not explain how that happened, but it also helps me remember to pray for God's will. When my dad was sick with cancer, I prayed that he would be healed. Well, guess what? He is healed. It just wasn't in the way that I wanted. That is why that prayer was not, quote unquote, unanswered. I hope that makes sense. They're all answered, they're all heard. It may not be in the way that we desire on this earth. I also love the sweet story when Samuel was a child. It used to be one of my daughter's favorites because it was in her baby Bible book, and we read it over and over and over again. I love the sweet innocence when he thinks the dad is calling him, only to realize that it is the Lord. Just so precious, and my daughter remembers it well to this day. Tomorrow is 1 Samuel 4 through 8. Happy reading!